In this episode, we are going to be talking about my top 10 tips on how to improve your Maya workflow. So, without further ado, let's get started with this episode number 33. So for those that don't know me, welcome to my channel. My name is Harvey Newman. I'm a professional animator and currently I'm working in the games industry at EA Dice here in Sweden and loving it. And for all of my new subscribers, welcome to my channel. I hope you guys enjoy your stay here. This is all about animation. I like to share my passion here in this channel. So let's get started with tip number 1. The very first step that you have to do when you actually start to Maya is to make yourself cozy. Make your Maya your own. So something that I haven't seen a lot of people actually use is something that Autodesk has been including in all of their Mayas for the last 3 years or so, which is creating your own workspace. So the very first thing that I want you guys to do when you open Maya is to actually rearrange your windows the best way you want. Don't let all the shelves that come included by default in Maya to show, because a lot of them probably don't apply to you as an animator. So you can actually delete the ones that you don't want. When you get all of that set, make sure that not only do you save preferences by going to File, Save Preferences, but also make sure that you go to the top right corner and you click on Save a New Workspace, name it something that you like, and then save that workspace. That's almost like a way to actually make sure that your settings are set correct. Every time you change your workspace as you grow as an animator, every time you actually improve it, make it better, make sure to follow exactly the same steps so your workspace is always the latest that you want and feels as cozy as you want it to be. If you need any more information, make sure to go back to my video that I've done not long ago talking about how I arrange my Maya workspace and how I feel is the best way to arrange a workspace for an animator. So the second power tip is change the background color of your Maya. Everything kind of works by default out of the box. Now, what I suggest is that you actually kind of set your own background color, and this can be either a very dark, just one color, maybe purple, dark purple, or dark green, something that actually pops out, or then make sure that you actually have a nice gradient color. I normally like to actually set my Maya as the sky, so it has like this blue to white gradient. There's a shortcut that you can use to flip between the two, so you can actually go from your gradient background to your solid background. So what happens sometimes is that your curves sometimes are not visible, and by default they're going to be either red or pink or blue, something like that, depending on who rigged it. So this is why it's useful to have two backgrounds that you enjoy, one gradient, one solid, and then you can switch between the two and make the most out of having a background that really works for you. So it brings a little enjoyment every time you open Maya every day before you get to work. Third power tip that I'm going to give you is to increase the size of your Maya timeline. By default, the Maya timeline is very small and the keys are barely visible. So what I want you to do is to increase the size of your Maya timeline by 2 times or 3 times. If you go to settings, you can actually see that you have different options. Choose whatever feels more comfortable to you. I normally have mine at 2 times. And then after you increase the size of your timeline, make sure to also go to your key settings and kind of enlarge your keys a little bit to make sure that they are more visible. So what I like to do is to increase my size by a little bit so I can see my keys a little clearer. So the timeline now is bigger and also your keys are a little thicker. And because you have these two things, you will be able to see both your keys and where you are in the timeline much more clearer. So make sure you do that in order to actually get more visibility for what you're doing in the timeline. Timeline is incredibly important, so make sure you set it the way you like. Number 4 is something that I actually cannot live without right now, and it is to set a hotkey that hides and shows my NURBS curves, because those are always going to be the curves that you use to manipulate your rigs. And it's very important for you to actually be able to hide them and show them on the fly, because what you want to do ideally is not show them at all. So if you have a character picker, get used to the idea of animating without curves being shown by using a picker or using a character select set. If you don't have those, then the next best thing is to actually have a hotkey that you can use to quickly show and hide your curves. So this way you can actually animate a little bit, hide your curves, see how it looks without your curves, and then show them again, continue animating. So having the key right there in reach, it's really useful, and I highly recommend it. This is another hotkey that will definitely save you time, and is a hotkey to PLAYBLAST your shots. This is really important if you have a slow computer. If you have a fast computer and it can kind of render your animation in real time, then it's not such a problem. Or if you use Maya 2019 or above, it's not such a problem either, because you can cache your animations and see them in real time. If you don't have any of those like myself, then you need to actually be able to PLAYBLAST as quick as you can. Now, don't fall in the trap to always PLAYBLAST your shots every 5 minutes. There is not a very efficient way to use your time. Make sure that you spend a good hour, 2 hours, set a timer if you need to, and then PLAYBLAST your shot when you do a chunk of work, so you keep yourself sane and you know that the animation is going well. Making sure that you're actually animating and just clicking a button, seeing the PLAYBLAST, closing it and continuing to animate is much better than to have to click around to find a PLAYBLAST button that you click and then do a PLAYBLAST. So make sure you set a hotkey that you can PLAYBLAST, and it's going to save you so much time. This is yet another one that I cannot live without, and it's basically to set two keys that will allow you to step forward and back between frames. Maya by default already has those, so make sure you set those two keys closer to where your hand naturally rests in the keyboard, so that way you can quickly go from manipulators to then go into shifting between keys. And that's really useful and saves you a lot of time, and it keeps you once again on that flow of animating, instead of having to move your hand or looking at the keyboard to know where the keys are so you can step between frames. So get used to that flow, get used to not look to where your hand lays, and step between keys as much as you can so you don't see the interpolation. That's why setting your poses to stepped is so important. But if you actually step between your keys, you almost don't really have to do that. You can always see what animation is on your keys without seeing the things in between. So think about that, set that up, try it out, and I hope it's as useful as it is to me. Make sure you have a hotkey to delete keys on your graph editor. So a few episodes ago, spoke about graph editor tips and tricks. And in that video, I showcased a script that I use that basically allows you to slice your curves to either create keys or delete keys. So I use this script specifically to delete keys every single time. And it's really useful to have it in a hotkey, because it means that as I'm cleaning my keys in my graph editor and I have to delete a key here and there, I can quickly just press that key and delete the key without having to actually kind of faff about and like select the key in the graph editor, press backspace or press delete to then delete the key. Make sure you watch the graph editor tips and tricks so you know how to install that script and how it works. It's one of those things that kind of make you think, how can I actually have lived without this all this time? I could have saved so much time. So give it a try, and I hope it helps you out. Increasing the size of the rotation manipulator in Maya. Now, by default, Maya, the rotation manipulator, comes with these thin hair-lined controllers. So Maya has the setting that you don't specifically have to click on the axis of the controller in order to select it. You can roughly click around where the axis is and you will select it. Now, to me, it's more of a mental thing, but if I don't see those axes as thick as possible, I feel like I'm gonna miss it, or I feel like I have to precisely go in, and it makes me think so much harder than I really want to select just one axis on a rotation manipulator. So what I want you guys to do is basically go to your settings and increase the size of your axis manipulators as thick and fat as you want them to be. What happens is, as soon as they're a little thicker, your brain stops working so hard to be so specific. And now all of a sudden you can select them at will, and you know that roughly around here is my x-axis, so I'll click it and then Bob's your uncle, everything's good. So it's more of a mental game. You only notice how important it is when you stop using it, or you use a Maya from another user, a colleague perhaps, and then you kind of go like, wow, how can you actually work like this? So it helps me a lot, and I hope once you guys give it a try that you can see the difference. So make sure your tangents are always set to being non-weighted. So basically, plain old tangent with no weights at the end. This is a little controversial because a lot of people really kind of go, I am definitely a weighted tangent kind of person. I am definitely a non-weighted tangent kind of person. And I feel like there's a clash that happens every time you talk about this subject. I actually used weighted tangents for my first 2 years of animating. I was being stubborn about it. I was basically going like, this is the best thing possible because I have more flexibility. And as soon as I started using non-weighted tangents, I basically became a more efficient animator. You already have so many tangents on your graph editor when you have your animation done. Thinking about how big or how small your tangent is yet another thing that you have to keep in mind, and is way too much information, at least in my brain. Now I'm going to create an episode specifically for this, to explain my reasons and to explain how I work with my tangents and the difference between them. But for the time being, give the simplified non-weighted tangents a try, see how you feel, see if you feel a little better, a little bit more efficient. And if not, then perhaps on my future video, I'll be able to explain a little bit more about how I work with these tangents. Now, this one is not so much about Maya, but it's much more about like slowing down the thought process of animation. There's loads of annotation tools that you can use, both PC and Mac. They allow you to draw on your screen. And what I found is that when I actually step away from my animation for a little bit, when I want to find certain arcs, when I'm polishing things and I want to know where the head is going, where the shoulder is going, what's the arc of the arm, I actually step away from Maya. And normally I fire up my screen annotation software. It can be anything of your choice as long as it draws on the screen. And basically I go through every frame and I try to make an annotation of where the key is. And then eventually I trace a line through all those points and I find my curve. And if you're a pro and you've been working for quite a few years, then obviously you can use specific plugins, specific tools, Maya's own grease pencil to do those things. But what I find is that using a tool that is outside of Maya allows me to, for a minute, step away from Maya, stop clicking the buttons within Maya, and actually just zone out, trace a path, think about my animation, think about where I want to go with my animation, what am I missing, why is the arc this way, and then step back into Maya and continue animating. There's something about drawing on top of your own animations that makes you think a little clearer, but at least to me, I find it incredibly zen, incredibly useful to think outside the box, and I highly recommend you guys give it a try, because just like me, maybe you find it that is really useful and it helps you out with your animations. So, that is it for me this week. Sorry about the fact that I haven't really been jumping into Maya. I'm gonna carve out some time, hopefully these holidays, to actually kind of do some more tutorials, get some hands-on, because I miss it. I genuinely miss it. I hope this was useful for you guys. Power tips on how to actually make your Maya workflow a little better. Do let me know down in the comments if you guys have any other questions when it comes to Maya and workflows. Maya, it's incredibly deep. There's many different ways to achieve the same result. So if you guys know of any better way or any different way to achieve the same things that I've just mentioned here, then comment down below so others can know, and myself included. So that's all I had for you guys this week. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. And until next week, stay well, stay safe. Peace. You still around? Great. In that case, click here to watch more episodes, or click here in order to subscribe to my channel. I thank you deeply. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you next week when I drop more videos here in this channel. See you then.